My brother destroyed my life and slept with my wife. Now he wants a favor after I got the $2 million our parents left. I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these. But after everything that's happened, I need to put it somewhere. Maybe it'll help me breathe again. My brother, Nathan, was always the golden boy. Charming, athletic, the kind of guy people just gravitated toward. I was quieter. Bookish. But I didn't mind, at least not until everything started unraveling. It started small. Nathan would borrow my stuff in high school and never return it. Then he'd lie, saying I never owned it in the first place. My parents always believed him. I let it go. Then in college, he dropped out midway through and moved in with me, without asking. Said he needed a fresh start. I told him he could crash for a week. He stayed for 7 months. I met Isabel in my final year. She was smart, kind, everything I wasn't even looking for but somehow knew I needed. We got married 3 years later, after I landed a stable job and Nathan finally moved out. I should have seen the signs then, the way he'd look at her just a little too long, the way she'd laugh a little too hard at his jokes. But I was naive. I thought we were all family. 2 years ago, everything shattered. I came home early from work with flowers, our anniversary, and I found them. On the couch. Together. They didn't even try to deny it. I don't remember much of what I said that night. I just remember the way Nathan looked at me like he was the victim. Like I was being unreasonable for not understanding. Isabel cried. Said she was confused. That it just happened. That it wasn't supposed to mean anything. 6 months later, she gave birth to a baby girl. Nathan was there in the hospital room. I wasn't. I had filed for divorce by then. I haven't spoken to Isabel since the court finalized everything. But Nathan, he never left my life. Not really. He texts. Calls. Says he wants to make peace. That the baby, his baby, is my family. I ignored him. 4 months. Until last week. He showed up at my door, uninvited, holding that little girl in his arms. And what he asked me. What he said to my face. It was something I never imagined in a million years, that he stood there like we hadn't been torn apart by betrayal. Like he wasn't holding a living reminder of everything he took from me. The baby, her name's Mia, was fast asleep, bundled in a pink blanket. She looked peaceful. Innocent. I didn't say a word. Just stared at him. My grip tightened on the door. Then he said, "Look, I need your help." I almost laughed. Help, he went on like this was some casual conversation between brothers. He'd gotten himself into a bit of a situation, as he called it. Apparently, Isabel had left him. Packed up her things and disappeared a few weeks ago. No warning. No note. Just gone. She said she needed to figure herself out, he told me, trying to sound calm, but I could see it. His eyes were sunken, his clothes wrinkled, like he hadn't slept right in days. And then he said it. I need you to take care of Mia. Just for a little while. I can't do this alone, man. I'm drowning. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It just burst out of me, dry, bitter, ugly. After everything. After stealing my wife, building a life from the wreckage of mine, now he wanted me to clean up after him. You want me, I said slowly, to raise your daughter. The one you had with my wife. She's your niece, he said, like that explained everything. Like that erased what he'd done. I looked down at the baby again. She blinked up at me, big hazel eyes just like Isabel's. I'm not the guy you go to for favors anymore, Nathan, I said. But then he did something I didn't expect. He started crying. Not crocodile tears, real, raw crying. Said he wasn't cut out for this. That Mia didn't deserve to suffer because he was a screw-up. That Isabel might not come back. And in that moment, for just a second, I saw him not as the man who destroyed me, but as a terrified father. And the baby in his arms wasn't part of the betrayal. She was a victim of it. I didn't say yes. But I didn't close the door either. And that was my first mistake. He came inside. I don't know why I let him. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe curiosity. Maybe some buried instinct that still saw him as my brother, no matter how much damage he'd done. But once that door closed behind him, the silence between us felt thick, years of resentment pressing in from all sides. He set Mia down gently on the couch. She blinked up at the ceiling like none of the world's chaos touched her. Just a baby, untouched by betrayal or bitterness. Completely innocent. I haven't slept in 2 days, Nathan said, rubbing his temples. I'm barely eating. I can't afford daycare right now. And work's been a mess since Isabel left. I crossed my arms. And what does that have to do with me? He looked up, pleading. You're the only one I trust. That line almost made me laugh again. The irony of it. I trusted you, Nathan. You were my brother. My blood. He winced, but didn't try to defend himself. Maybe he finally realized there was nothing left to say. Instead, he just whispered, I'm not asking forever. Just until I get things together. I sat on the far edge of the room, away from him. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face stone cold. Why not leave her with Isabel's family? She cut ties with them before we got married, he said. They won't take her. And I don't know where Isabel even is. I looked at Mia again. She was gnawing quietly on her fist, little pink cheeks puffed out. Something twisted in my chest. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. I told him I'd think about it. And for the next 2 days, I did just that. I barely slept, barely ate, thinking about this little girl who had no idea the storm she was born into. Thinking about whether it was possible to separate her from what her parents had done. Whether I could bear looking into her eyes every day and seeing the face of the man who ruined my life. And then on the 3rd day, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. It wasn't Nathan. It was someone who told me he'd been arrested. And suddenly, the decision I thought I had time to make, was made for me. The voice on the phone was calm, almost robotic. This is Officer Hughes from the County Sheriff's Department. We have a Nathan Keller in custody. You're listed as his emergency contact. I didn't respond right away. My brain was still trying to connect the dots. What happened? I finally asked. He was found asleep in his car at a gas station, infant in the back seat. The baby's fine. CPS has her for now, but we need someone to come down. He mentioned you might be willing to take temporary custody. My stomach dropped. Temporary custody. I sat there, the silence on my end probably telling the officer everything he needed to know. I didn't say I'd come. I didn't say I wouldn't. I just asked where they were and wrote down the address with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. By the time I got to the station, Nathan was in a holding cell, head down, looking like every ounce of charm he used to weaponize was gone. A shadow of the man I used to know. He didn't see me at first. When he finally looked up, his face cracked, half relief, half shame. Thank you, he whispered through the glass. I didn't answer. I asked about Mia. An officer led me into a small room where she was sitting in a car seat, blinking up at the harsh ceiling lights. A CPS worker stood beside her, clipboard in hand. She's calm, she said. Clean, fed. But she can't stay here overnight. Are you willing to take her, even temporarily? And there it was. The moment everything pivoted. I looked down at Mia. She reached out her tiny fingers toward me like she knew. Like she'd been waiting. And against every instinct screaming inside me, I nodded. Yes. I'll take her. They had me sign forms. Gave me a diaper bag, a few bottles, a list of emergency contacts. It was all a blur. The only thing I remember clearly is strapping her into the back seat of my car, sitting behind the wheel, and realizing my life was never going to be the same again. Not because of what Nathan had done, but because of what I had just chosen. That first night was chaos. She cried. A lot. I didn't know if she was hungry, overtired, scared, or all three. I held her, walked her up and down my apartment in circles, whispered nonsense just to keep her calm. At one point I sat on the floor, completely drained, and she finally fell asleep against my chest like she trusted me, like I'd always been there. I hadn't held a baby in years. I'd never even imagined being a father. Especially not like this. The next morning, everything felt surreal. Bottles, diapers, a stroller I had to borrow from a neighbor who had twins. I was supposed to be working that day. Instead, I was sitting in my kitchen with a child that legally wasn't mine, watching her blink curiously at a banana like it held all the secrets of the universe. I got a call from CPS that afternoon. "We'll need to schedule a home visit," the caseworker said. "And just so you're aware, if her father doesn't prove capable of custody in the coming weeks, we'll begin exploring permanent placement." Permanent. That word hung in the air. Nathan called me from the jail phone the next day. His voice was shaky. "I'm sorry, man. I never meant for this to happen." I didn't answer. He kept talking anyway. "You don't have to keep her forever. Just until I figure things out. You're the only person I trust." "Don't say that," I said sharply. "You trusted me after you slept with my wife. After you blew up my life." There was silence on the other end. Then he said something that caught me off guard. "I never deserved her. And I sure as hell don't deserve Mia. But you might be the only one who does." He hung up after that. I sat in the quiet for a long time, watching Mia sleep in the portable crib I'd set up next to the couch. And I wondered, for the first time, if maybe she was meant to be here. Not as part of my brother's destruction, but as the only thing he ever did right. The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and unexpected peace. Mia started to recognize my face. She'd smile when I walked into the room, tiny, toothless, and pure. I didn't know how something so beautiful could come from a situation so broken. But every time she laughed, something inside me healed just a little bit. People started noticing. My neighbor, Mrs. Delaney, brought over baby clothes her granddaughter had outgrown. My manager let me work remotely, even though we both knew it would be a mess. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose that wasn't tied to someone else's choices. It was just me and her. Simple. Fragile. Real. CPS kept checking in. The caseworker, Sarah, was kind but firm. She told me Nathan had been released on probation. No jail time, just court-mandated parenting classes, therapy, and supervised visits if he wanted custody back. I didn't ask to know more. I didn't care. Until Nathan showed up at my door again. He looked different. Not arrogant. Not smooth. Just tired. He had a backpack slung over one shoulder, and he didn't make a move to step inside. "I just want to see her," he said quietly. "I brought some of her stuff. Toys. Her favorite blanket." I stood there for a long moment, then opened the door. He sat on the rug across from her, letting her crawl into his lap. She giggled, pulled at his hoodie strings, babbled nonsense. He laughed softly, like he remembered how. And for a moment, it almost felt normal. Almost. But then he looked up at me with that same hopeful look I'd seen weeks before. "You're doing great with her," he said. "She's happy. Safe." I couldn't have done that. I stayed silent. "I'm thinking," he added, "maybe it'd be best, if she stayed with you permanently. I froze. What are you saying? He looked away. I think she already knows you more than she ever knew me. And I've done enough damage. I don't want to confuse her. I don't want to ruin her too. It hit me harder than I expected. I thought I'd feel triumph. Vindication. But I didn't. I just felt hollow. She's not a debt to be paid, I said quietly. She's not your apology. I know, he whispered. That's why I want to do the right thing, for once. And then he stood, kissed Mia's forehead, handed me her favorite blanket, and walked out the door. That was the last time I saw him. Life slowly found a rhythm after that. Mia and I built a quiet world of our own. Morning walks in the park. Grocery trips where she'd wave at every stranger like a tiny mayor. Bedtime stories she didn't understand but demanded anyway. I started learning her little language, what her cries meant, what made her laugh, the songs that soothed her when she couldn't sleep. Some nights I'd stare at her crib and wonder how the hell we got here. She wasn't supposed to be mine. But she was. Somehow, in every way that mattered. CPS scheduled a final review hearing. Sarah told me, in no uncertain terms, that if I wanted to pursue adoption, the courts would support it. Nathan had signed over his rights 2 weeks prior, without fanfare or protest. It was like he'd disappeared entirely, no calls, no visits, not even a text. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt this quiet grief settle in. Not for him, but for what should have been. For the brother I thought I had. For the family I lost. But the day of the hearing came, and I showed up in a suit that didn't fit quite right, holding Mia in my arms as she clutched her stuffed elephant like it was her bodyguard. The courtroom was mostly empty. Just me, Sarah, the judge, and a woman from Child Services taking notes. I expected formality. Procedure. What I didn't expect was the emotion. The judge looked at me and said, "You've shown this child stability, care, and unconditional love in a time of chaos. The court commends you." I swallowed the lump in my throat. Then she asked me the question that changed everything. "Do you wish to adopt this child as your legal daughter?" I looked down at Mia. She looked up at me, drool on her chin, joy in her eyes. "Yes," I said. "Absolutely. Yes." The gavel came down. And just like that, she was mine. We celebrated that night with pizza on the living room floor, Mia with a bottle, me with a beer, and the faint glow of cartoons playing in the background. She had no idea what had just happened. No clue that her last name was now legally mine. But I did. I felt it in every breath, every beat of my heart. She wasn't a reminder of betrayal anymore. She wasn't a wound. She was my daughter. I started introducing her that way. My daughter, Mia. The first few times, it caught in my throat. But it got easier. And then it got natural. And eventually, it felt like it had always been true. I didn't hear from Nathan again, not for months. Until one morning, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name on the envelope in that familiar crooked handwriting. It was short. A single page. Asterisk, I watched the court record online. I know I said I didn't deserve her. I still believe that. But I wanted to tell you something. You saved her. You saved me too, in a way. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope, someday, you'll tell her I loved her enough to let go. Asterisk, there was no signature. But I didn't need one. I folded the letter, put it in a small wooden box, and locked it away in the top of my closet, where I keep things that matter but can't be held onto forever. Mia is 2 now. She's walking. Talking. She calls me Dad without hesitation, and every time she does, I feel a strange mixture of pride and awe. We've come a long way from that night on the couch when she first looked up at me like I was someone she could trust. She was right. And I won't fail her. Last week, we celebrated Mia's 3rd birthday. She wanted a dinosaur cake, specifically green with the spiky kind on top. I stayed up until 2 a.m. making it myself, with frosting all over the counter and flour in my hair. When she saw it that morning, her face lit up like the world had just handed her the moon. She ran to me in her little party dress, arms outstretched, yelling, "Daddy," like it was the only word that mattered. And it was. There were friends. Balloons. Laughter. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I stepped back and just watched her, this bright, bold, unstoppable little soul who came into my life like a wrecking ball and rebuilt it from the inside out. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, taking her in, saying yes when everything inside me was screaming no. And every time, I say the same thing. No. Because I didn't lose everything when Nathan betrayed me. I didn't lose myself in the mess he left behind. I found something better. Something purer. I found my daughter. And she saved me more than I ever saved her. A few nights ago, Mia woke up crying. I rushed into her room, still half asleep, and found her sitting up in bed, eyes wet, clutching her elephant. She looked at me and whispered, "You came." I sat beside her and wrapped her in my arms. Of course I came. I'll always come. She buried her face into my chest and fell back asleep within minutes. I didn't leave her room right away. I just sat there, holding her, feeling her tiny heartbeat against mine. And it hit me, how far we'd come. How much love had quietly grown out of something so painful. I used to think Nathan ruined my life. And in many ways, he did. But life doesn't end when someone breaks you. It reshapes. It rebuilds. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it gives you something better in return. Mia didn't come into my world the way most daughters do. But she is mine. Fully, truly, deeply mine. And when she's older, when she asks the hard questions, I'll tell her the truth. Not all at once, not harshly, but honestly. I'll tell her she was born into chaos, and then loved into something stronger. And I'll end with this: you were never a mistake. You were my beginning. That's the story. That's how my brother destroyed everything I knew, and how his daughter saved everything I didn't.